Hi, welcome to How to Repair. Today we're unboxing a Beko heat pump tumble dryer. Now, heat pump technology is actually phasing out all the conventional tumble dryers that are on the market today. By the end of 2025, according to the legislation, they are phasing out vented tumble dryers and condensing tumble dryers, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. We're going to be unboxing a Beko, and the model number on this is BM3T3822W. Although heat pump technology is a fantastic piece of technology and it is much more energy efficient, the problem with these heat pump tumble dryers is if they are not maintained correctly, they are only lasting between 4 and 6 years. In this video, I'm not going to be doing the conventional unboxing. I'm going to be showing you how to prolong the life of the machine. If you want to see videos on how to use the machine or the energy efficiency of the machine, you can look elsewhere. This video is specifically here to assist you in maintaining the machine. I will also include the full workshop manual on this machine at the end of the video. Beko are very good at supplying the technical information with regards supporting the consumer and the engineers that have to work on it. Other manufacturers are not. And this next statement is not directed at Beko. It is directed directly at the heat pump technology. Until they solve the problems of the filtration, the compressor lifespan and the gassing systems, heat pump technology is not beneficial when it comes to tumble dryers. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, the energy savings from heat pump tumble dryers do not outweigh the cost difference in machine with regards vented or condensing tumble dryers, and the energy saving that you get from these machines are not substantial enough to warrant the amount of e-waste that is going to end up being produced, because these machines are only lasting 4 to 6 years. Now, with my sermon complete, let's get on with the unboxing. Best way to unpack these is slice them straight up the polystyrene on all 4 corners. And then just go round the polystyrene at the top and cut the bands. This will allow the packaging to come off easily and you won't mark the cabinet. Now we've unboxed the machine, there's 2 things you want to do. Inside the machine you have some foam packaging for a transit bracket. Remove that and make sure you take the film off the actual door. Beko heat pump tumble dryers are basically a normal tumble dryer that does not have a heating system. It uses the dehumidifier to extract the moisture from the clothing. This is done with a refrigeration process. Inside the machine you have a compressor, gas and a coil, or 2 coils. One's the evaporator and the other one is condenser. This heats the air going into the machine and cools the air as it comes from the machine to condense the warm moist air back into a liquid. The most important thing with all heat pump tumble dryers are the filtration systems. I was recently at the Berlin trade show, which is the domestic appliance trade show, and I have noticed over the years that all manufacturers are really trying to improve and solve the problem of fluff and lint getting into the evaporator and condenser. When they first came out, they only had a standard filtration system like on a condensing dryer, but now they have 1 filter, a secondary filter, and some machines even have a 3rd filter down on the evaporator. Dust is the killer of these machines, and if you do not maintain it correctly, the machine will be on that big e-waste pile within a few years because of the amount of work that is needed to repair these when they go wrong. Okay, the manufacturer does give you a couple of little bits and pieces to maintain the machine. This is an actual brush system and is designed to clean the fins on the condensing unit. I'll just explain the front for you. We have the filter system, which I've just shown you. This then comes down to the condenser. There's 2 clips to remove the condensing plate and that comes away. Here we have the evaporator coil. Now the evaporator then goes into the condenser, which is at the back, and the whole unit is about that long. And I've got one here for you at the end of the video to show you a blocked system. They do give you a small brush to clean the fins. It is very important that you do not bend these fins in any way, as you will restrict the airflow. The air from the filter system comes down through here that is warm. It then goes over the evaporator that condenses the warm moist air back into a liquid. You would normally see these plates when running and the machine is efficient with the airflow, but these temperatures that I'm going to give you will depend on room temperature. But basically you will have somewhere in the region of 20 degrees running here when you have 40 degrees running on the heating side, which is the condenser. That warm air then travels into the machine and evaporates the moisture in the clothing, and the cycle continues. Now what I'm going to do for you in a second is set the machine up with some temperature probes, and we are going to let the machine run for 40 minutes with a hyperlapse video. And the hyperlapse video is going to basically record the temperatures that are going on in the evaporator and the condenser, so you can actually see the differences. After that, I will then strip down the machine for you to show you every component in the machine and basically show you how inaccessible a lot of this stuff is unless you have the workshop manual. And I'll give you the link to that later in the video. Okay, we're going to be testing this machine, and I'm just going to explain the basic things that we've got here. We have a temperature reader here, which is just giving us the air temperature in the room, and I've got a dual probe system here, and one channel is connected to the rear of the machine, which I'll show you now. Now what I've actually done is loosen these two screws to slide the probe into about this area. And I'll show you a quick picture of this inside. Just to show you what is behind this panel, if I lift it away, we have the fan blade that drives the warm air back up into the actual drum to evaporate the water. And we are going to slide the probe in here. The other channel is going to be inserted on the evaporator at the front. Now, here we have the socket connected to the ampage meter, and you can use your smart meter at home, but I will put a link to a portable ampage meter and the temperature sensors that I use in the description on this video. They're not expensive. You can get them for as little as £10 each. Now, I've actually put a piece of wire on this temperature probe, which is on channel 2, and we have a slight differential of temperature range. That's because the probe is touching a piece of metal at the moment, and it will warm up slightly because I've been touching this metal, and that's the only difference between the two. Now, to insert this, we've got to open up the flap, take off the cover, and this is a very thin piece of wire, so I'm able to slot this down approximately 2 to 3 inches down on the evaporator next to the coil. I am now going to put the flap back up, shut all this up, and I'm making sure all this is set up correctly. Now we're going to be turning this dryer on, and we are going to set it to manual, and we are going to set it up to 40 minutes, and you will be able to watch the temperature as it changes. Also, you will see the time, and you will also see the room temperature. This time lapse will take approximately 10 minutes of viewing, but I will timestamp it for you. And I'm going to put some chilled out music not to bore you. Excuse the pun. Now, as you will notice with that time lapse, basically after 15 minutes we had approximately 15-degree differential, and we were at a rough room temperature of about 20 degrees. And the maximum temperature that the dryer got to after 40 minutes was approximately 50 degrees, and we nearly had a 20-degree differential, and that is with a brand new dryer. As they get older and the fluff starts building up in the machine, the differentials will change. Room temperature is also very important. But one thing I want to say about heat pump tumble dryers: this was drying a single towel for approximately 40 minutes. That would be perfectly dry in a vented dryer. It may be a little bit moist in a condenser dryer, but the heat pump dryers do take twice as long to dry the clothes at least. And what this means with fabrics is you are going to wear out your clothes a lot quicker, because the longer they are tumbling, the more fabric that comes off the clothes. And this actually adds to the problem of all the lint and fluff that builds up in the machine. Now we're going to strip down the machine to have a look inside. But first I want to show you the two filtration systems. This machine had never been used. And the first filter here, you can actually see the fluff that's built up already. And this is just one towel. Now, lifting that off, let's have a look at the second filter. The second filter already has got small amounts of fabric down the bottom. This is why it's very important that you clean these filter systems every time. Any fluff that passes through here will end up in the condenser. Okay, here we have the machine apart, and I'm going to explain all the components so you know where they are when consulting the workshop manual. Now, if we come down to the bottom of the machine, we have the main motor, and the main motor is driven by a belt that goes to a pulley to drive the main wheel. This has got a tension spring next to it. Now, this motor has got a capacitor which is up the top here, and there are two capacitors up there. One is for the compressor and the other one is for the motor. If I remember correctly, but you will have to consult the workshop manual on this, I believe the motor is either an 8 or 9 UF capacitor and the compressor is a 15 capacitor, UF that is. Down the bottom here we have the first NTC sensor on one of the lines going to the compressor, and this is to measure the temperature of the gases. There is another NTC sensor on the far side and one at the front. This measures the temperature going into the collection box, basically on the outlet and the inlet side. So you have 3 NTC sensors on this machine. Coming up to the top, we have the circuit board, which is the main control board. We have 2 support pulley wheels on either side of the drum. And these pulley wheels really should be, all the bearings on the machine should be inspected every 3-4 years. It's very important with these machines. Every few years, do bother to go down here and give a little bit of a dust with an old paintbrush and the vacuum cleaner to remove any of the dust that ever gets down to this area. As I keep saying, dust is the killer on these machines. You must also remember, because these machines take 2.5 times longer to dry than a vented dryer, they will also wear things out like bearings more often than with a vented dryer or condensing dryer, due to the fact that the machine runs 2.5 times longer. Okay, behind this plate that you can see here is the main bearing system. And there we have the phosphorus bronze bearing for the drum. And I'll just put that back on immediately so I don't lose anything. Down the bottom of the machine, we have the fan blade. This is an item that I would suggest cleaning every couple of years. Now at the back here, we have the pump system, and that's only held with 1 screw and 2 clips. We have the float that's inside here, which attaches to the micro switch, which tells the machine how much water is in this chamber. We also have the pump, which attaches to two pipes. One is the pipe that goes all the way to the actual collection tray, which pumps the water to the top of the machine. And then, of course, we have an overflow coming back down. And of course, if the overflow was active, meaning water was too full in the chamber at the top, it would come down here, fill this compartment, then the micro switch would actually stop the machine due to the fact that it was about to cause a flood. If you have problems with the pump system due to blockages with fluff, which comes from the evaporator and condenser, if the machine is not well maintained, then this also can cause a problem. Okay, on this side of the machine, it's pretty straightforward. We have the collection tray at the top here, and basically that just comes out. And then we have the fill pipe that comes from the pump to fill the chamber, and there is an overflow on this side. Moving down to the bottom of the machine, it's straightforward, not a lot here at all. We have access to the top of the condenser, but this cannot be removed without removing the whole of the top of the machine. The two NTC sensors that are down the bottom here measure the airflow temperature coming into the actual evaporator, and then we have another one on the back of the evaporator that measures the temperature coming out. And these two NTC sensors are controlled by the actual circuit board at the top. We also have accessibility to the door interlock, which is just behind here, but to access that, the front panel must come off. Now at this point I'm going to go into a rant, and it's not for you, the general public. I'm aiming this specifically at the manufacturers who build these heat pump tumble dryers. The accessibility to the evaporator and the condenser is an absolute nightmare and a disgrace, to be honest. A child could build better. All you needed to do was actually make a plate that was detachable from one side of the machine that would give you access to the evaporator and the condenser, and then a sealed plate which was removable on the underside. This then would expose the evaporator and condenser completely. Then engineers would be able to easily go into a customer's house, blow it out with an airline or even a flushing fluid to clean the evaporator and the condenser properly and remove any fluff that is built up under the machine. And when I show you at the end of the video a blocked system, you'll understand why. Okay, lastly, moving round to the front, yes, we have the control panel, and this can all be removed to strip down to get to the electrics. The door is easily accessible on the actual two screws that hold it in place. And then we have the door lock. And down here, which I've already shown you, is the evaporator at the front end that goes back to the condenser. We also have a cooling fan here. And this one screw will allow the cooling fan to come away, and you can unplug it if you have a problem with the cooling fan, and accessibility to the compressor. But this is only to keep things cool. Now, hidden behind the two filters, just down in here, and I'll bring the camera up for you so you can see, is the other NTC sensor. And all these NTC sensors have values at a certain temperature, which is all in the workshop manual. The air goes down through here over that NTC sensor and then enters into the evaporator at the front here. And there we go. That's all the components on the machine. Now I'm going to show you a block system in a second, but first I want to tell everyone that's got one of these machines, the link for the workshop manual and the wiring diagram with all the test procedures is in the description on this video. This will take you specifically to a web page that has the PDF documents that you need to be able to dismantle the machine and find all the components as well. There are exploded diagrams which have reference numbers on them, and they link to any spare parts that you require. The information for removing the front panel, the sides and the back of the machine are all in the workshop manual if you need to know where to access any of the screws. Do make sure that you put the screws back in when assembling the machine in the correct place, because some screws are threaded for going into plastic, others are threaded to go into steel. Okay, here we have the bottom half of a heat pump dryer, and they are very hard to access, the evaporator and the condenser. As I have said earlier in the video, if manufacturers manage to put a sealed box on the top here and one on the underside, this could be cleaned so much easier. This is a pretty much identical unit to the actual Beko that I've got on the workbench there. Most heat pump tumble dryers, you have to take the front panel and the back panel off and the drum out of the machine to gain access. But I just wanted to show you the fluff buildup in this machine. And as you can see, there was a lot of dust all through this machine. It had been used quite heavily, but poorly maintained. And this machine had stopped working. Although the compressor is good and the gas levels in it are good, the evaporator is getting cold and the condenser is getting warm, but the airflow is unable to work. And if you look down here, and I'll bring the camera down for you, you only need to look at the actual fins that are on the evaporator here. The air that comes down through the filter into this chamber to pass through the evaporator and then the condenser has very little chance of working correctly. All these fins are totally blocked up, and it's not just at the front of the machine. This dust has travelled all the way through the evaporator and onto the condensing unit as well. This has to actually be lifted out to actually be cleaned properly with an airline or a pressure system to actually get rid of all this fluff that builds up on here. Now, the other thing I want to point out while we're down here is the water that drips down off the actual fins and goes down to the pump has to go through a collection system. And if I lift this filter out, which goes to the pump system, and remember the dust is absolutely dry at the moment, but I can promise you all the way through this evaporator and condenser, the bottom of the machine is clogged up with sludge and dust which is built up over the years due to the lack of maintenance. Now, I've already undone the screws, and there are multiple screws on these units and some of them are hidden, but I've undone the screws so we can lift the top off to show you inside the actual cooling and heating unit. As you can see here, the dust has got through all the way, even on the condenser at the back here. There is fluff everywhere, and this needs to be flushed out for it to work efficiently again. And the biggest problem is the access. I mean, I have to actually undo the compressor, take off all the bolts, and then carefully lift this whole unit out just to be able to clean it. And you are talking a 2 to 3 hour job to do it correctly. And it is just really difficult on all heat pump tumble dryers to be able to clean the evaporator and the condenser. I hope you enjoyed all the information that I've put together for you over the last few days filming this. The workshop manual, wiring diagram and other videos to assist you in any repairs on these heat pump tumble dryers is in the description below. And if you do need any spare parts for these dryers, remember all you have to do is use the reference numbers in the exploded diagrams to match up with a full list of parts at the bottom of the page. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please remember to give it the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, as that's what keeps us going and able to make these videos for you. And if we really help you, remember you can always donate to the website by clicking on the Buy Paula Beer page. Thanks very much indeed for watching.